but thank you all for joining.
Absolutely. All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome to the 4th annual State of Orange County event. My name is Derek Pantelli and I'm the president of CFA Society Orange County. We sincerely appreciate you taking a moment to join us to learn about our county from some of the most active and influential leaders. And before we get started, I just wanted to make a few announcements. As a society, our core focus revolves around embracing and enhancing community, as well as fostering educational opportunities for current and aspiring financial professionals. To that end, we have a few events and opportunities I want you to be aware of. On October 26th, we have a Zoom event in partnership with WISE, which is the Women Investing in Security and Education. That event is entitled Investment in Career Perspectives from Powerful Women in Finance. On November 4th, we have a luncheon at the Pacific Club, where senior economist Strider Elos of First Trust will be speaking about the Roaring 20s 2.0. On December 8th at the Pacific Club, we'll hold the annual charter holder and holiday dinner. Very excited for that. And then keep an eye out for updating for new rotating venue networking opportunities, those to be announced. In education, we've partnered with Cognitier, a leader in technology skill training for business and financial professionals. And lastly, we will be hosting university visits within Orange County and the Inland Empire to introduce the CFA Charter. So if you know a local student or professor, feel free to reach out to us for more information. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tina Shackman, fellow board member and chair of the Women in Finance Initiative. Tina?
Great.
Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Derek. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm really excited to be joined by some incredible panelists this evening, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So I'll do a roll call and we'll have them introduce themselves and tell us one thing that they are looking forward to doing in 2020. But first, let me go through some quick housekeeping items. If you could please make sure that you stay muted during the presentation. We will have a Q&A portion at the end. If you have any questions, please either use the Q&A or the chat box. We'll be checking both to submit questions at any time during the program. And then also afterwards, if you're interested in doing any networking, we will be moving to breakout rooms. So please stay on and you'll automatically be moved into a breakout room after the session. And then lastly, we are going to be sending out a survey. So we hope that you take a moment to fill that out and please provide us on feedback for this evening's event, as well as anything that you'd like to hear about going forward. So I'm going to, if we can remove the slide and put the panelists up on the screen, I am going to switch over and Sherry, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Tina and Derek. It's an honor to be here for the State of Orange County from the CFA Society. My name is Sherry Friedenrich. I'm the Orange County Treasurer Tax Collector. So I work for each of you out there. Protecting your public funds is one of my important responsibilities. Safety, liquidity, and then yield is important because these are working capital funds. I have been with the county since 2011. It's an elected position, so I was elected first in 2010, then re-elected in 2014 and 2018. And I am the first woman in the county treasurer position. So I'm honored to, again, represent everyone here protecting the funds. Probably one of the biggest accomplishments I've had is that over the 11 years I've been in office, I've saved almost $1 billion in savings for us taxpayers, which definitely will help. We have everything paid for by the taxpayer, so anytime we can make savings, it's great. And one thing that I'm looking forward to in 2022 is I'm currently the president-elect for the County Treasurers Association of California. And so in June, I will be, I guess not elected because I've been elected, I will move into the president position. It will allow me to certainly go around the state, network with our fellow county treasurers. There's 58 counties here, and we have 5 divisions that we break the state into, be able to look at some of the best practices in each of those divisions that I can then bring back here to Orange County, because one of my goals is really to bring best business practices and streamline our operations here and make good use of the taxpayers' dollars that are, of course, very precious. So I think that's what I needed. And so I'm honored to be here.
Well, thank you and congratulations. I can tell you, we really appreciate your dedication and diligence, particularly in the role that you're in. So thank you very much.
It's all about money, isn't it?
It's all about money. Molly, why don't we go ahead and move to you?
Sure. Thank you for having me today. First off, I want to say I'm a proud CFA designation holder of more than 20 something years. I'm going to fudge that one a little bit. But this organization and the overall CFA process is very near and dear to me since it's enabled my entire career. I am the CIO of the Orange County Employees Retirement System here locally. The system now has about $21.5 billion of assets. I have been in the CIO role for almost 4.5 years now, although it feels like 4.5 minutes, I think. But 4.5 years, when I first arrived in Orange County, we were about $14.5 billion. So we've increased the fund size by $7 billion since I've been at Orange County, which is great for the county at large because, you know, anyone that provides a public service basically in the county is most likely, other than some nurses or doctors, maybe we don't have as many of those, or teachers, because those go to different union type pensions. But if you are providing some type of public service in the county of Orange, we definitely are the pension of choice here. So excited to be here and share what's going on in the markets and what's going on at OSERS. And I guess I was asked, what am I looking forward to? A group of friends, girlfriends that I've had from different walks of life through different parts of my life. We're all coming together, hopefully, if all the rules allow us, to go to Tuscany next year. And we're going to have a wellness retreat. We're going to one of those converted, beautiful Tuscan farmhouses, and we're going to do Italian cooking lessons and yoga and all kinds of different things for a week, and then go to Lake Como for a few days. So fingers crossed that all the borders are open by the time we want to do it.
Indeed, that sounds amazing.
Mhm.
That's definitely something to look forward to. Well, thank you, Molly. And that is extraordinarily impressive growth in 4.5 years.
Yep.
My math is right. It was about 50%. So
Yeah, about 50% AUM growth in 4.5 years. It's been quite remarkable.
That is amazing. Okay, well, let's switch over to Lisa.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Hi, I'm Lisa Sparks. I have a couple different hats that I bring to the table today, and it's such an honor to be invited as a speaker for this fantastic event. I can't wait to hear what everyone has to say. It's going to be a wonderful conversation for our county. So I'm Lisa Sparks. I am the founding dean of the School of Communication at Chapman University. I'm also an endowed professor. I built the school from kind of a sleepy place to what it is today, where I achieved my goal of being able to hire excellent faculty. But in addition to that, we just approved a PhD program, and it's been launched the last 3 years. So we're about to graduate our first doctoral students, and it's the only PhD program in communication in the county. So we are the number one in the county. So I'm very proud of that. And this year I'm on a sabbatical leave because I finished up my dean position contract last summer, and I just, as of August, am free on a sabbatical leave. So that's really exciting for this year. And then I'll go back to being faculty, after this year, this sabbatical leave. The other hat that I wear is I serve as trustee for Area 5 of the Orange County Board of Education, where we are really making tremendous progress in our approvals of public charter schools, providing school choice for hundreds and hundreds of families in Orange County. And it's, boy, I get a lot of, I don't know, I feel like we're doing really good work when those families come up to me and thank me and the other board members for, fighting the fight, because it's not always easy to get these public charter schools approved, even the really good ones. We've fought really big battles. For example, when Orange County School of the Arts was up for renewal, it's the #2 nationally ranked art school in the country, and there was a big fight for it not to be renewed, which was incredible. And that just gives you a little idea of the fights that we're facing every month with, really trying to help Orange County families. So that's another hat that I bring to the table in terms of today. Now, in terms of what am I looking forward to this year? Well, my sabbatical leave year has been really, I've been waiting for this year for many, many years. So I'm very excited, and I'm spending my time by taking flying lessons. So I'm hoping to become a private pilot. I've had 2 lessons so far, one on a very sunny day flying over the ocean, which was amazing. And the second one was, it was a cloudy day and there was a lot of turbulence. So that was a little scary, but I felt pretty good. But I haven't landed yet. So, watch out for when Lisa Sparks is landing the plane at John Wayne Airport, because I'm not quite ready for that. But I'm looking forward to hopefully improving my lessons in flying. So thank you.
That's great. That's exciting. I did not expect that.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. You'll have to keep us posted on that.
I will.
Okay, well, let's switch over to Amy.
Well, good evening or afternoon, everyone. It's just a pleasure to be here with you all, and a special thanks to Tina and Derek and the CFA OC Society. I'm Amy Kaufman. I am the Vice President of Experiential Learning and Talent Development for the CEO Leadership Alliance of Orange County. We are an alliance of over 50 of the leading companies in Orange County that is a CEO-led or C-suite executive-led group that is shoulder to shoulder with education to bring workforce together to create a thriving OC for all and career pathways for all students. So it's an absolute delight to be here with you. And Lisa, I will say, my husband has his private pilot's license, and when we first met and we were dating, he says, I said, oh gosh, I'm a little bit nervous. He says, don't worry, we will land. What he didn't tell me later is that inevitably you will land. He just didn't say it would be good or bad.
Right.
So I congratulate you on that. For 2022, what I'm most looking forward to doing is that CLA OC, CEO Leadership Alliance, we are launching an AI for Workforce initiative. So stay tuned. We're going to be doing training at K-12, at the colleges, the universities, and upskilling and reskilling. Really excited to bring this innovation lens, working with our education partners to Orange County.
That's great. And I know we're going to learn a little bit more about what you're doing in that space later on. So that's great. Thank you. Well, let's get started here. I'm going to start with the economy. So we're going to shift gears and talk to Sherry. So Sherry, tell us right now in this low interest rate environment, is it helping or hurting the economy in Orange County?
Well, thank you, Tina. Definitely interest rates have a huge impact, and because we are one of 58 counties, it's interesting when you look around the state how the economies are different. And of course, we just, are still in the middle a little bit of the pandemic. Obviously, a lot better than we were starting in March. But, interest rates really are a double-edged sword. On one side, the historically low interest rates that we've had when the Fed dropped rates to 0 back at the 2 emergency Federal Reserve meetings back in March 2020, there was obviously a lot of panic initially because people weren't sure what to happen. But certainly over the last year and a half, it really has fueled all of the refinancings, the housing market. If you are in the market to buy a home, you are bidding against a number of people. And if you looked at the average median prices in housing, it has significantly gone up. And in many cases, certainly the median's gone up and people are paying in well over some of the original listing prices. So, our housing stock has definitely gone up for the residential. Commercial's been a little bit of a mixed bag, but property is property, and we are in a very favorable location with where we're located, really south of Los Angeles, along the coast. Generally we do go inland, of course, but it's really very attractive, the weather, a lot of things. So it really has been very valuable. Of course, being the property tax lady, that has helped certainly with property taxes. I know our clerk recorder who records all of those transfer of ownership, they have just been so busy this last year. And so it definitely has helped that housing market, and certainly the county in that respect. Our collection rate this year on property taxes for secured taxes was 99.3, which was just below our record of 99.4%. So literally, people are paying their property taxes timely. We also had our first auction in about 4 years, our tax auction that we do annually. We had canceled it because of COVID, but we only had about probably 8 properties, a lot of them unimproved anyway. So it wasn't really a big deal. And we canceled them the last 3 years prior to that because we didn't have enough properties to auction off. Whereas when you look at San Bernardino, Riverside, even San Diego, they have hundreds of properties that are on their tax auction every year. So just a little tidbit. This year we sold the most expensive property in the tax auction. It was a property down in San Clemente. It was Ocean View, not Ocean Front. And it sold for $1.3 million in the tax auction. So luckily it was all online. Usually we are in person. This was the first year we went online with our secured tax auction, but we require people to basically bring cashier's check or cash, and that would have been a lot of cash coming in. So we were very glad that they were able to wire the money in after, because they put down a deposit of $5,000 is all. And then they ended up paying, of course, the rest of it in the wire this week. So certainly, it's been a seller's market, or basically, but certainly buyers have been buying the items that are there. So they've done very well in the economy. Now, there's a couple of aspects of the economy that do very poorly when there are low interest rates. One of them is one of our most most challenged part, which is seniors. As you know, as you move through your career, especially as a CFA, you become a little bit more conservative because you need to maintain those funds. You can't be maybe in the stock market as much because you may need those funds for long-term care, just your living expenses, you're on Social Security, maybe your 401k. And so the senior population has really been just devastated now twice, because just back in the 2008-9, rates had again dropped to zero. And really, U.S. Treasuries are earning nothing. So it's been very difficult for seniors to even keep up with their buying power, because when inflation or CPI is higher than zero, you just aren't keeping up. And in both cases, the interest rate was being really artificially held down by the Federal Reserve, obviously to help stimulate and to help the economy recover from COVID. So it was obviously a good reason for that, but it does certainly hurt those seniors who rely a lot on fixed income, more conservative products than those who are in the equity markets. In addition, one of the unknown areas that people don't really think about is part of government, because for us, we've had this housing boom and prices increasing, which has helped because we are 94% funded by property taxes for our general expenses, for our general revenue that pays for our general government. But myself as the treasurer, we have $10 billion. About half of it belongs to the school and community college districts. About half of it belongs to the county. And literally we're earning, 0.58%, which is very, very low. Obviously, we're not keeping up with our buying power. We see a lot of our costs going up, and we're not able to maintain that because we are required to invest 5 years and in very, very safe fixed income products. So we don't take the risk on of going into the equity market. It's not allowed by law. So I think that, there are definitely winners and losers when you have low interest rates. And, some businesses do very, very well. Obviously, there was a lot of municipal bonds that were sold. The school districts all refinanced all of their bonds. So there were certainly benefits with those, but, it does have impacts on both sides.
Right. Right. And you make a good point when you were talking about the seniors. We do see that folks that are getting closer in retirement, actually, because the markets had been so good, are over allocated into equities. And so that risk is something that is a little unnerving at this point, but obviously the county can't go down that road.
Right.
So when we think about property taxes, obviously increase in property revenues, a lot of that's is positive for the county, but has there been anything that's been negatively impacted as we've gone through the pandemic?
Again, I think being here at the county where we have so many operations around the county, and as the county treasurer, we essentially touch every taxpayer that owns property, or all of the businesses, because what happens is you have your secured property taxes, which are on the land, the improvements that you have, that those who are landowners pay that. And then you have what we call the unsecured or personal property taxes. And every business is required to pay the same 1% on all of their business equipment. So as you can imagine, when the the stay-at-home order hit in March, everything but essential businesses were closed. So those businesses were no longer generating revenue unless they were essential, and they were still required to pay their secured property taxes and their unsecured property taxes. The governor had put in place an order that allowed us to basically delay payment of property taxes initially through June 30th, he had said, but he extended that through May 6th of 2021. So that was hugely helpful for businesses who back in March of 2020 just didn't have any cash. So they were able to take advantage of that. And I can assure you that you go down the street and you look at all those names of restaurants, of malls, and they all took advantage of it. It was a very, very challenging time for them. And then the problem was you had these unsecured taxes, which are on every business in the county, and nothing was done for them. And so they were closed. They needed to pay these unsecured taxes, and the state did nothing for them. We saw about a 2% drop in our collection rate on our unsecured businesses, whereas this past year, as you saw, we were really back almost up to a record year. So businesses were very, very hard hit. We had a lot of closures, and those businesses just aren't coming back. So those taxes that are due will never be paid. And again, we had a lot of bankruptcies because you had a lot of them that closed and had to file for bankruptcy. Again, very, very sad. We processed about 6,000 cancellations, penalty cancellations, saving taxpayers over $3 million. And some of the stories were just heartbreaking, because if it was your business owned the secured property tax, we were able to cancel those penalties for them. And people in the real estate industry were considered small business owners. And so they were one of the population that the governor allowed to have us cancel penalties. And so if you own 5 rental properties, you were essentially a small business. And so you could come and have those penalties canceled. But it's really been very challenging for those businesses. Now, some businesses, of course, that were on the internet have done very well. And I think one of the things that really benefited California and certainly Orange County here is back in, I think, 2013, there was a lot of controversy on internet sales tax and what was going to happen. And the state negotiated with Amazon and said, we are going to start charging taxes on Amazon products online. And they negotiated it with Amazon. They agreed to do it. And then I think a year or two later, Amazon agreed to allow the third parties who were also selling on their site to pay sales tax. And that was really huge, because if we wouldn't have had those internet sales taxes, I mean, everyone stayed home and bought online, maybe not initially, but certainly as the pandemic went, it was certainly able to help those cities, because, you know, like the city of Costa Mesa relies on South Coast Plaza for a huge amount of their revenues. And you know, initially all the TOT, the hotels closed. I mean, there was just a lot of red blood, unfortunately. And now, obviously, coming out, some of them are doing better. We talked a little bit about John Wayne as the airport. They're certainly to see capacities very close to where they were before. So there is recovery, certainly in some of the types of businesses, but it has been very challenging this last year.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of John Wayne, I'm going to put a slide up. And this is the list of top 20 secure taxpayers in Orange County. And I noticed that John Wayne is not on this list. Can you tell us a little bit about why that is?
Excellent question. And one of the advantages of being in government is that you don't pay property taxes on the land you own. So even though they have all of that land over there and that they use for the airport, because it's used for public purposes, there is no property tax. In addition, if you are a not-for-profit and you own your own building, you have to file for an institutional or a exemption, but you're able to have your property valued, and then you get the exemption from the assessor that would reduce your property taxes down to zero. So it really helps those who have a public purpose or are qualified as a 501c3 under the IRS rules, to be able to really focus on your mission and not worry about having to pay taxes. Now, if there is some income property that you do, you would have to pay that type of, you would have to pay unrelated business income. They call it UBI. But if you don't have any, if you're a church and you're basically just a church that provides, religious services, you would not have to pay. So when you look at that list, of course, we see our largest landowner, which is Irvine Company at the top. Probably some Prop 13 values there. I'm sure their land is probably worth more than that. And in addition, I mean, Disneyland is just celebrating, what is it? Is it the 55th year this year? I know they were just saying about what year of anniversary it is. And again, when you look back, some of the properties owned by Disneyland are actually owned in another name, but it's owned by Disney because they purchased it from a private party. And so when we accumulate that list, we try not to look at just the ones owned by Disney, but we look at the properties that are owned or controlled by them also. And many of those I've owned for a number of years. You do see several of the hotels that are on there. And of course, they've really suffered this last year. So as you look at this next year, the assessor may now be changing their values to accommodate a little bit of the difficulties, and then that would lower their tax burden if their assessed value goes down, because it's basically the 1% plus. I think the average is about 1.09 for the tax bills, and the average tax bill is about $7,000. So when you look at the Irvine Company, you obviously see some large numbers there, and that's available on our website for anyone to look at.
That's interesting. I just did not know that about the nonprofits. So the last slide I'm going to bring up is, and I'm bringing back up the list, but this is a slide based on where the typical property tax dollar goes in Orange County. And I was curious if you anticipate seeing any changes to this allocation over the next 5 to 10 years, or do you think it's going to be pretty close to these numbers?
You know, an excellent question. Again, we always like to let our taxpayers and our citizens know where their money goes. And this is really the epitome of where it goes by those different shades. You see that over 60% of it is on the right side, and it goes to schools. Then we have cities at 11% on average. And then we have districts that are there. Actually, Orange County next, which is the county of Orange. And then you have special districts, and then you have redevelopment. And this formula was established back in 1978 with Prop 13. So there are some small changes, like when we had new cities that came in, but generally this allocation is not going to change. I think this year the schools are about 63%, but really substantially it's all based on the fact that when Orange County back in 1978 moved along with all the other counties to Prop 13, we had very low taxes. So most of the dollars went to schools. Unfortunately, we are what they call as a donor county. And a donor county means that we have money that goes to fund Northern California schools. So if you look at City and County of San Francisco, which is essentially both a city and a county. So the cities here make 11 cents, plus the county, we make 6 cents. We here in the county, if you were one of the average cities, that would be 17%. Well, the city and county of San Francisco gets over 60 cents of the dollar. That means there's a lot less to pay for their schools. And the schools are really funded by the state. So the money goes to the state, and then the state basically divvies up all the monies back to the schools. And again, they have a certain, as I know, Lisa knows probably very well, there's a certain formula as to how they pay per pupil. And so they just take that pot of money and they spread it out. And unfortunately, a lot of our dollars go to fund Northern California schools because this is the Prop 13 formula that's used. Now, over the years, the legislatures have tried to make it a little more equitable. And there was a time when we got some additional dollars from the state because our county is funded at 6%, which includes 1 cent for the public libraries. LA County is funded at 24 cents versus our 6 cents. San Diego and Riverside are funded, I think, at 12 and 18. So they get a little bit more than we do, but we are, I believe, the lowest county in the state, with the lowest percentage of property tax dollars coming back to the county. Now, the one thing in our favor is that we do have high property values. So that does help because obviously when you're in, say, Riverside and their values aren't as high, their median price is not as high, it helps. But that's the story.
Well, fantastic. Well, I think I'm going to shift gears. Thank you, Sherry. We always appreciate your insights. Please stay on because we'll probably have questions toward the end. I'm going to shift gears over to Molly. We'll talk a little bit more about the pension system. So, Molly, can you describe the OSER's management team?
Sure. So OSERS is the administrator for a series of pension plans. So there are about a dozen active pension plans, and there are some that are closed. But it's most people think it's just the county's pension plan that we work on behalf of. But we also do the Transportation Authority, the Clerk of Courts, the Sheriff's Department, the Fire Departments. Collectively, we do one city in Orange County. So it's a collective. So we are an independent agency, so to speak, that administers for all of these into one collective pension plan. So we merge all the assets for one portfolio exercise. But then it's obviously got different slices and dices depending on if you were closed or open pension plan, whether you are your pensions are safety members versus non-safety members. There's different benefit formulas. There are also differences between how long of a tenure you have in your role, whether you are someone that's in what we call legacy pension formula or the PEPRA formula, which is the Pension Reform Act of a few years ago. So it's very complicated. We have about 100 people that work at OSERS. We have 10 individuals that are in the investment division under my purview. We have I would say 4 divisions plus a couple departments in total. So that, you know, there's quite a collective. Speaking just to the investment department, we have 9 investment professional roles and 1 administrative and compliance type role. We have 4 different layers of individuals in the investment process. So we have analyst layer, which is an investment analyst position or a senior investment analyst position. Then we have our officer level candidate or employees, which are also broken down by seniority into investment officer and senior investment officer. Then we have our director levels. So we have director of investments as well as potentially managing director level individuals, and then myself. I would say we're very, very diverse. We have about half females and half male members of our team. We've looked and we speak, I believe it's something like 11 languages. Collectively, we have about 50% people of color, 50% white. We have about the same breakdown as born in the United States, born outside of the United States. The reason I bring this up is I think it's really a strength of ours that we have such a diverse group, which then produces a diverse network of resources. And that allows you to look at, you know, just investments with a different eye, with a different lived history, but it also allows you to find things that maybe a more homogeneous group might not find. You know, my LinkedIn behavior is going to look different than, you know, the next person's and the next person's. But if you have 10 people who look different from each other, then your networks are expansive. If you have 10 people that are very, very similar in their backgrounds and behaviors, you might have a very overlapping, your Venn diagram would look different, so to speak, of what your LinkedIn network looks like. So I think it's really helped our organization over time look a little different than some of our other pension peers. We just think about vetting our managers slightly differently. Like I said, lived history and lived experiences definitely influence what you like and what you don't like, what you're willing to do, how you think about risk. I would say our culture is very Socratic. For those that might have gone through sort of like a law school environment, or, you know, Harvard is especially famous for Socratic method teaching. My father was a lawyer, my mama was a teacher, so I get to that naturally. But it's about, you start with your hypothesis, like this investment is good because of X. And then it's everyone's job to debate that theory, poke holes in it, make it stronger. It might come out of that process and be like vetted as, yes, that was a sound, you know, hypothesis. We're going to go forward with that investment. But when you've got 8, 9 people challenging it for like a 360-degree review almost, because they're seeing it differently, I think it helps us come out stronger with portfolio ideas. So I would say, you know, we're very, very active in the market. We onboard, we're onboarding about 24, maybe 30 new investment ideas a year. It's largely in our private equity basket right now. We have relationships that we build up over time, and a lot of times we just, as they call, re-up. So there's a very process-oriented investment style there. It's very prescriptive, but it does mean that we're constantly vetting new ideas every single day, every single month. It feels like we have 12 in process right now. So very, very active group, but we also work with investment consultants as an oversight layer and as a way to find and extend our reach even further into investment markets globally. So we do also work with 3 investment consultants right now. We work with a real estate consultant, Aon Townsend Group. We work with a private markets consultant, Axia. Torrey Cove, for some people that are in this area, Torrey Cove was based out of San Diego area. So you might have heard of them. They've been since acquired by Axia. And then we work with Makita Group as a general and risk consultant. They're also out of sort of the northern San Diego kind of area. So we have a lot of layers of oversight, a lot of people involved in the process. It's very robust.
It is robust. I almost feel like it needs to be a case study for the CFA Institute because they've done a lot of research into having such diverse investment teams, and clearly there's a lot of merit to it.
Well, and I would say, just to give an example, we have one individual on our team. She's from Sweden. She's been in the US now for about 10 or 15 years, but some of the most sought after private equity firms in Europe are actually based in Stockholm. It's a very big hub for private equity funds. And we get to differentiate ourselves from other US investors because she will conduct her due diligence meetings in Swedish. And so there's natural affinity. We have actually seen that it has jumped us to the head of the line, so to speak, in getting allocations because we're memorable then. And, it's just anything that you can do to differentiate yourself because they're selling to us as much as we're selling to them. We have to sell to these private equity managers. Why would OCERS be a good partner with you? They want to know about our mission. They want to know about, the role we play in our community. They want to know that we're good investors and smart, intelligent investors. So anything that we can bring to the table at the end of the day that sticks in their head, like, they like you more, you talk their native tongue, whatever it may be, that's helpful to us at the end of the day in securing our investments.
Yeah. Wow. Well, obviously we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the effects of the pandemic. So I was curious if there was any kind of at the onset, did OCERS make any changes to the portfolio? I mean, was there any, impact when we kind of saw the floor falling in 2020?
Well, I use the hurricane analogy a little bit too much maybe, but if you've been through a big storm or any type of event, you can either be paralyzed by it and just hold on for dear life, or you can be the person who's looking for, the way to solve the problem or the way to get through it. I think there's kind of two different types of styles when you're going through a crisis. And, I have to give credit to our entire organization, our board, our staff, our consultants, everyone that was part of the process. We were already scheduled to do a triennial asset allocation study and liability study for 2020. We do them every 3 years. But interestingly, we were coming up on when we were going to bring this forward to the investment committee, because we always start with the assets, the liabilities then follow a few meetings later. And we all looked around the room as things were happening in March and said, should we pause or should we go, so to speak? And we all, then the consultants and our staff said, well, we don't get these opportunities that often. We should keep going. And, luckily, not luckily, but happily, I should say, everyone else that was part of the process, our actuaries, our board, everyone that was part of the process said, yes, let's actually keep progressing through this. And we ended up within the period of March and April, putting forth a new asset allocation model and moving 15% of our total assets into additional equity strategies. And if everyone can recall, the first week of April was like the low of the equity markets. So we don't time things perfectly. And I take, it's a happy accident when these things sort of line up like that. But we were able to really be actively engaged as the markets rebounded. And from the lows to the end of the year, I think the equity markets were up about 75% from the lows. So that was a very big move, bold move for OCERS, and just pleased as I can be that everyone was sort of in the boat and rowing in the same direction, and we got so much accomplished so quickly. Pension plans don't usually work that quickly.
Right.
I mean, I just, thank my lucky stars that, we work in an environment at OSERS and within this community that we were able to move fast and have so much support for the process.
Mm-hmm. And that you were all on the same page and ready to move forward. Yeah, that's impressive. So that's pretty amazing. Let's go to the other side. Tell us what's keeping you up at night right now. What are some things that you're worried about?
I mean, I think there's two things that they're related but separate at the same time. The first I would say is valuations in the market. Every single asset type, with the exception of long treasury bonds, is looking historically rich. If you do a standard deviation or a type of exercise, almost every asset group is close to breaching a 1 standard deviation price point. Some of them are even in the 2nd deviation category on price point right now, historically. There are a lot of people out there saying, well, this time it's different because we have such low interest rates and technology has made productivity so much different and all these other things. But every time I hear someone tell me this time it's different, the market will remind you, no, it's really not. Markets cycle. We don't know when they're going to cycle, but they do. But at the end of the day, also 8 out of 10 years historically are positive for the markets. So you bet on that probability of 8 out of 10. If you're going to place a bet, you place it on the 8 out of 10, not the 2 out of 10, so to speak. But it worries me because we will have some type of resetting of prices at some point in time. The nice thing about OSERS collectively is that we have been on an aggressive path to pay down our unfunded liabilities. We have good demographics in this county. We have support of the active payrolls of all of the pension systems that we administer for. They all pay us. There's no one that's in arrears. We have good plan sponsor behavior. So we are largely cash flow neutral right now, which means for every dollar that comes in, we pay out $1, give or take. So we're not eating into our corpus or our core assets, and we won't for quite some time. So I think we're in a very favorable position, even if markets reset, because we don't have to sell anything to pay for our benefits that we're going to be giving out to our retirees. The other thing that I would say is surprise inflation is on my radar. And if you've been watching the news, I think just in the last couple days, maybe last week, I've really seen a pickup on local news covering what's happening in the ports of LA and Long Beach. But it has been on my radar for a full year. We have had anywhere from 40 to 140 long tankers sitting out off the coast of Southern California waiting to come into port. And they just have not been able to bring that number down. And I think we hit peak. I think we hit that 140 number just like a week ago, something like that. And what's also so all the Amazon buying that Ms. Friedenrich so bluntly told us was, hey, we got more taxes because we tax Amazon, but everything now is coming through basically like 3 ports in the US. And the Long Beach port brings in 1/3 of all imported goods that come into this country come through Long Beach.
Wow.
What we don't have, though, is integrated logistics systems supporting the Long Beach activity. So all the different operators operate on their own system, as opposed to what you see in Europe, where each port has an integrated system that the operators tap into. In this country, it's all bifurcated and it's all separate and it's all disparate, and some are good at it and some aren't. We don't have as much rail connectivity into Long Beach as other places might. And we have a shortage of truckers right now. And I don't know if everyone was watching news today, but there was a very large announcement out of the Biden administration that they have cut a deal to do 24/7 operations with the private sector in order to try to fix this. So they have gotten UPS, Walmart, Target, FedEx, trying to think, there's about 10 organizations that they have made deals with to extend to 24/7 operations until we can unclog this problem.
Wow.
But it's starting to push forward as spot inflation on certain goods and across America. And as we walk into Christmas buying sprees again and all these other things that happen towards the end of the year, it will only get worse. So we're hearing that the stuff that came out of today's negotiations could, within 2 weeks to 30 days, help bring down some of that. But spot inflation could be an interesting debate if we can't get the port and the supply chain system worked out.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm so glad you talked about that. When we talked earlier, we kind of went through that, but it's a very interesting anomaly that we're going through. So it's a very good point. Well, thank you, Molly. I appreciate your insights as well. I do want to shift gears because I want to get to Lisa and Amy, but let's move to Lisa and talk a little bit more about education, because clearly there's been some issues. Not only have we had issues with getting workers back into the workforce, but we're definitely seeing, a little bit of retreat from kids going to school, kids going to college. You've got remote learning that needs to be worked through. So Lisa, tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you've seen in your world, and what are some things that we probably need to be aware of as a result of this remote learning?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have sort of a foot in the K-12 space where I'm talking with a lot of parents, and I'm a parent myself of 4 children, 2 in the school system, but currently the others are out the door, thankfully. And then the hat that I wear as former administrator at Chapman and professor at Chapman, knowing the levers that we were able to pull and turn and all that in terms of making sure that we would survive and come out with financial strength through the pandemic. There's so much to say on this topic. As you all can see and have seen through friends and family, Zoom school was kind of a disaster. And there's positive and negative around Zoom school. The positive is that people, teachers on the K-12 level, but also on the university level, are savvy with Zoom school. Some were terrible, and really what we did at Chapman is had a lot of training around that, and training and development around how does that work? What is Zoom school? What does a good Zoom lesson look like? And we took that really seriously at Chapman University, and I think overall did quite well through that. So there was a lot of additional skills, and it takes a lot of extra effort actually to teach Zoom classes than to teach in person. And I did a Zoom class of teaching persuasion to undergrads, and I let everyone in who wanted to come in, 125 students, which for Chapman is very unusual because our classes are usually around 25 students or so. But I have a background in TV, so I kind of knew how to insert some videos and bring in some, make it interesting. But the typical K-12 teacher isn't trained in this kind of thing, and even a lot of professors. I mean, my field is communication, so I might know a little more than like a science professor or something. So there was a learning curve for everyone, and the pivot that we had to do, it was just within a few days, and so that was pretty scary for a lot of teachers. So with the Zoom school, the positive of it is that parents were able to see what's really going on in the classroom in our K-12 schools. The good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And so really you were able to see what is actually happening in the classroom. And that was really interesting. And also you could see a real difference in some of the innovative, and I kind of touched on in my earlier, some of the innovative approaches that the public charter schools are able to take, and frankly, that a lot of the private schools have a lot more ability to innovate relative to our public schools. There's variability, of course, with teachers and the approaches they bring and so forth, but parents were really able to have a window into the classroom and to really start comparing notes. And so that's what they've been doing. They've been talking to each other about their Zoom experiences. And that's really been brought to the Orange County Board of Education, where we're hearing from parents, all the dissatisfaction of what was going on in the classroom, what's being taught in the classroom. That prompted us as leaders in terms of sunshining things that are happening in our K-12 schools. And we have 29 school districts now. So we were able to hold some forums that parents wanted us to hold to really shed light on some of these issues that are being taught in the classroom, such as the California Healthy Youth Act. What does that really mean when we unpack that? What's really behind that? As well as the critical race theory and ethnic studies curriculum. What does that really mean? And so we were able to have forums that really educated parents on, what kinds of questions do you need to be asking of your principals, your teachers, your school districts. And parents have been much more involved in understanding what kind of education their kids are getting. So that's been really interesting. And it's always very exciting board meetings at the Orange County Board of Education.
Bit of a silver lining there.
Yeah, you're looking for some entertainment. It's always very exciting in our meetings. Then in terms of Chapman University, I think we did a really good job at learning how financially how to pivot, what levers to turn on, what levers to turn off, to plan ahead. Because of course, none of us knew how long the pandemic was going to last. And so, we had to, in March of 2020, is that right? Yeah, March of 2020, when we had to pivot to online learning, we also shut down all of our travel, because typically our faculty, and including myself, we'll travel to conferences and so forth. So we turned off those levers, and that in that category, we were able to save a lot of money while we were trying to figure out everything else. And so that was pretty interesting. We really, then we had to deal with recruitment because we are a private university and we're not an online university. We're not like the Cal States that can just stay online. We are a very expensive university, and parents expect that we're going to be in person in terms of what we're delivering. And we're known for that. We're known for really high quality education. So we needed to find a way to get kids back in the classroom for their education, for their mental health, and so forth. And so that was a challenge, both, as you all know, for both K-12 space as well as universities. In what measures do we put in place that cost? We had to do all the PPE, the masks, the shields, the ventilation systems that cost millions and millions of dollars to get everything ready, the upgrading of all the technology in all the classrooms. And again, I'm speaking for Chapman University on that. K-12 had to figure out, how do we get our teachers back into the classroom where they feel safe? And we had some of that at Chapman as well. So that was really complicated in terms of messaging. And so that brought a lot of stressors. And then I'm going to try to tie all these stressors to then where the financial community, since most of you all here are in the financial community, and some ideas around that. And so, we have stressors with, faculty and then students. So let's say we had to set up the dorms with, when you assign students to the dorms. Well, there were unintended consequences, because you would sign students into a dorm room and say 3 people in a dorm room. Well, maybe 2 were vaccinated and 1 wasn't. And so then parents were kind of going crazy with that. Oh, how are you putting my kid who's not vaccinated with the kid who's vaccinated, or vice versa? So that became kind of complicated, and we had to figure that logistically, right? Whereas K-12 didn't have to deal with those kinds of logistical issues. But all of us had to deal with the stressors related to burnout, as well as psychological challenges. And then that connects with financial issues, because parents, people were losing their jobs. People couldn't pay for their tuition at Chapman because they were losing their jobs. And in the K-12 space, people, everyone was just trying to survive. And so that created a lot of burnout on a lot of levels, and stressors and challenges. Not only were healthcare workers, but teachers were feeling burnout. with all these changes, adaptations to the Zoom, what childcare issues because you're now staying at home, versus all these work challenges. So there were a lot of psychological and logistical challenges around, and still happening around masking, around vaccination, choice around vaccination, all of that. So tying all of those stressors, it's all about the money. Like I think Sherry referred to before, it always goes to the money. And so the financial challenges were really looming alongside these burnout, logistical, psychological challenges that families were experiencing. And so I was thinking, as I was thinking about what we were going to be talking about today, how can the financial community help? And I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool if, because I was thinking everyone's so stressed out, and still, how do we get kids back in school? Then how do we alleviate some of that, those financial challenges as people are figuring out how to recover, and what does the new normal kind of look like? And I was wondering if we could all brainstorm with the financial community. Could the financial community come together and support public efforts by setting up some sort of pro bono financial literacy advising clinic or advising day or something where, let's say, every Friday afternoon, a different bank or a different financial company in our community, donates 2 to 3 hours or something where, families who need some financial literacy help or questions, they would have access to that. Because most folks don't understand basic things like
Right.
fixed rates of mortgage versus adjustable rates, or, they don't understand words like inflation or stagflation or sure don't understand OSERs and retirement funds at that level. And how do they push through? And I don't know, I was just thinking something like that would not be too complicated to put together. It would be, I think, a good PR thing for the financial community to come together and do something like that. It would just require a little bit of organization on when and how would it map out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I'm an educator. I'm not a financial person. So I was trying to bring a new idea to the financial community around how we can help folks in the education system, which touches all of us in some way as well.
Yeah, and well, I love the idea, and I can tell you, my firm and a lot of other folks here on the phone, we do offer financial education, financial literacy workshops. I think it's just a matter of the accessibility of them finding us, or vice versa. So it's definitely out there, but it's just a matter of figuring out how to get the connections.
Yeah, because I think people are just really stressed out. And that's impacting their ability to be there to help educate their kids and do that supplemental education. And teachers are stressed out, and I think everyone's stressed out about money, and people are very stressed out about, are their kids getting education, because they're behind. They're at least a year and a half behind.
Right. That was kind of the other part of it was, how are we going to really manage this kind of skills gap? And, it's just, I think it's going to take some time to work through the system. I don't know if you have some thoughts around that, but yeah, that's definitely going to be an issue.
Yeah. I mean, I think that typically when there's a skills gap, we tend to use summer to try to do some catch up time. So, that's another thing that I think we're all going to need to really think about. What does that look like? How do we provide additional tutoring? What we've done, many of the professors at Chapman, what we've done is, if we have students that have to miss a class because of whatever reason, a financial reason, whatever it is, I'll actually have a class on a Saturday morning with, a one-on-one to go over the material. Now, not every professor does that kind of thing, but I think we need to meet students where they are and lift them up, whether it's in the K-12 system, whether it's a public school, public charter school, private school, or at the university level. And we need to bring our A game every single day. And not everybody's doing that. And some of the reasons is because they're just, lazy, but some of it is because I think they're really stressed out and just sort of stuck. And so how do we kind of bring people along to know it's about the kids, it's about helping the kids, whenever and however we can meet them and lifting them up.
Yeah, no, that's a great message. It does also sound like there's a need for stress management curriculum as well.
Yes. We do yoga on the lawn at Chapman. Yoga on the
Yeah,
lawn is
there you
about me.
It's a beautiful lawn. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Lisa. We appreciate your comments there. I'm going to switch gears to Amy. I know we're running into a little longer than we anticipated, but I really wanted to get some insights from Amy, because something that you're working on is just really exciting. And I love what you did with the innovation index. So I think you were going to show a little bit of that, but I'm going to throw it your way. I think, the major question I had for you was, what do you see as a driver for economic growth in Orange County? I think you've got
Sure.
a
And
lot of comments there.
yeah, absolutely. It's interesting the way you phrased that, because my opening line, and we had not rehearsed this, was innovation as a job creator and economic growth for Orange County. So well done. I'm going to drop into the chat our link to CEO Leadership Alliance and our list of members, so you get an idea of who we are and the group that makes us up. And I'm just very quickly going to show you the flywheel that drives all the work that we do, because it is centered in innovation. We are purposeful leaders that believe in brighter futures. And by doing this 4-part approach in the flywheel, of course, experiential learning, entrepreneurial culture. Hey, this is Orange County. I mean, we are pioneers. We are drivers of innovation and entrepreneurship. And then, of course, look at technology, AI-infused talent. How are we going to use innovation and build this talent pipeline for artificial intelligence? And of course, continuing to brand Orange County as an ecosystem of innovation and places people want to not just come to, but stay in. And in order to not just develop our talent, but to retain it and attract it as well. But when I speak to innovation, there's just 3 tenets I just want to touch on today, and again, very briefly. But again, with Orange County believing in a thriving OC for all, and entrepreneurial culture and that mindset around innovation is essential to our economic growth. And we know that innovation-based economies, they bring good jobs, they bring growth, they bring prosperity. And a lot of this work, it's not new, we didn't make this up. A lot of this work was influenced by a professor of economics at Berkeley, which many of you on the call may know, Enrico Moretti. He wrote a book called The New Geography of Jobs. And what he said is that there's this multiplier effect around innovation, because innovation equals job creation. Because for each new high-tech job, there's going to be 5 additional jobs that are ultimately created, 2 at the executive level and 3 at the service level. So as we began having these conversations with our partners, of which Chapman is just a very, very good partner and someone we just truly enjoy collaborating with, along with our partnership with UCI, we created, we helped sponsor the Chapman UCI Innovation Indicator. And it's really the first that uses this standardized measurement of business, job, and wage growth to draw a picture of whether a region is on course to become an innovation or economy hub. And I think that's really important to us, because often we're hearing in the conversations in our economic and financial circles that, oh, all the jobs are going to Texas. I'll just use that as an example because it's part of an illustration that we shared with the actual indicator. So again, all credit here goes to everyone at Chapman and the UCI for the innovation indicator. You can see all the folks there. We were the sponsor. You can see our chairman of the board, our president, and the chair of our advisory board. So if you know our county, you know these individuals. But when it comes down to it, when you look at this innovation indicator, what is it that truly makes up the innovation portions of it? So we have to get real about this challenge. Let's take a look quickly at Orange County and Texas. You can see here, and again, I will make sure that we can share this presentation with you, but Orange County was ranked at a certain level for innovation. But then when you go ahead and look at the different rankings back from 2020, so we dropped down to number 7. And look as well, look at what's happening in Texas. What's going on here? So as we started looking at the innovation indicator and comparing California to Texas, again, look at the change. And again, in innovation jobs, we had an increase in California and an increase in Texas. And look here at the percentage of innovation jobs. Texas might have had a higher growth of actual jobs, but when it came down to the percentage of innovation jobs, look at the difference here. So again, tells you about a trend of innovation and innovation jobs. Again, our time is essential, and I want to make sure that I honor that. So perhaps at another time we can dive deeper into this. But look again at our rankings. This now talks about the race towards innovation between Orange County and San Diego. Now, this is where the rubber's meeting the road for us, and why we need to really double down on the innovation job creation. That starts with career pathways. We start with education, and we work at it from both ends so that we create this truly robust talent pipeline. Look at the difference here in the percentage of innovation wages. When we talk about things such as the cost of living, which could be a reason why individuals are not able to retain here in Orange County, innovation wages is part of that equation. How can we address that? So as we look at different areas, there's the industry of measure and control. Again, look at the graph from 05 to 20. Once again, San Diego and Orange County. Look at aerospace. We've been known for aerospace. Holding strong, but those are the numbers. And then finally, in scientific research and development, big difference there as well. And we have some incredibly robust institutions here. But at the end of the day, it's the innovation portion that's making that change for us. So the innovation index, the construction of it, looked at the percentage of innovation establishments, the percentage of innovation jobs, and the percentage of innovation wages. So when we took a look at that, that's when we said, let's look at innovation. Let's look at artificial intelligence. Let's look at emerging technologies as innovation and AI-infused opportunities to grow innovation. So again, with respect to our time, that was a little bit of speed dating for us, but I'm going to go ahead and pause there. Would welcome the opportunity to continue the conversation and invite our colleagues from Chapman and UCI, who are just gems of human beings, to present this in greater detail for you.
Well, thank you, Amy. And I do have one quick question. So, I'm thinking about how the workforce is changing quite a bit. There was a poll recently that said 50% of US workers right now want to be entrepreneurs or freelancers. Just seems like nobody wants to go back to the office or, work in that, traditional setting. And I'm wondering from a remote perspective, if you see opportunities for Orange County where we maybe don't have to have someone living here, but we can attract innovators or we can attract that type of workforce by having this more hybrid model.
Absolutely. In fact, we just wrapped up, and I'll just show this to you quickly. We just wrapped up a study that McKinsey did for us. And here's one of the slides. I'm just quickly showing it to you on the fly. But this is one of the slides that compared hybrid and remote work models. So let me show it to you in a bigger view. And you can see here of these leading companies, this across Orange County is what it looks like from a data perspective about hybrid and remote work models that are being adopted across a variety of companies. So yes, there is fertile soil for us to till when it comes to entrepreneurship culture, which can also be the entrepreneurial mindset or the intrapreneurial mindset within businesses. I really think that we're very open to that across the board.
Yeah, I would think so. Well, thank you. Kelly, if you want to put the panelists back up on the screen and we'll see if we have any questions. I don't have anything coming into the chat at this point. But if anyone has any questions that's on the phone, if you want to raise your hand, we're happy to open your mic and ask a question. I think we've got a pretty quiet group, or I asked a lot of great questions. That was that.
Well, I would offer a comment to Amy's last slide, and that is that I think people living in places like where I grew up in Oklahoma, if it's a lot cheaper to live there, and if I were living there and I could work for a company in OC and be flown out, in the winter, during tornado season. I think, you could really market it in a really interesting way to places in the Midwest. I mean, all joking aside.
Yeah, it is a way to leverage the access to talent that we might not have here in Orange County. So there is this bit of a push-pull. We want to develop and retain while also attracting. But attracting now also has the remote component to it. So from an HR perspective, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, I don't think we have any questions from the group. I know some had to fall off. So if you want to exit, you certainly can. We're going to stay after and do a little networking. I'm going to break it out into a few breakout rooms, but thank you all. Lisa, Amy, Molly, Sherry, I'm so grateful that you were able to join us today. Really, really loved the conversation and really appreciate your time. So if you wanted to stick around, please do. We're going to go out into breakouts, but have a good evening if you don't. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Kelly, if you want to break us into like 3 breakout rooms, there's not a lot of people left, so we'll go into that.
Sure. Give me one moment and I'll go ahead and adjust that for you all.
Okay.